You're watching and listening to the Pulse WV Live, a network that beats to the heart of God, and I'm your host, John Fowler. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about Generation Z, and Gen Z consists of individuals that are born between 1996 and 2011, which makes them the ages between 13 and 28 years old. They are the first generation to grow up with entirely on a digital age shaped by the internet, social media, and rapid technology advancements. And as a result, they tend to be highly connected, value authenticity, and prioritize mental health as well as social justice. However, when it comes to faith, Gen Z is also the least religious generation in history. Recent studies show that only 4% of Gen Z hold a biblical worldview, meaning that they believe the absolute moral truth as defined by the Bible, view God as an all-powerful creator, and see Jesus as the only way to salvation. Even though 40% of Gen Z identify as born-again Christians, many do not openly express their faith feel equipped to share their faith publicly. In contrast, when combining those who identify as atheists, agnostic, or having no religious affiliation, a staggering 49% of Gen Z report having no faith in God, and this makes them the first generation in America's history where the nones outnumber the Christians.
It's not often we have anything to celebrate when it comes to religion and politics, so let's enjoy this one. It turns out the youngest Americans are the least likely churchgoers we have ever seen, according to new data from the Cooperative Election Study and analyzed by sociologist Ryan P. Burge. This is a massive study that tells us a lot of information about what people believe. And what we learn is that not only have the percentages of non-religious people gone up within almost every generation, the bars are simply higher the younger you get. Check out this chart right here. It shows how nearly half of Gen Z, people born after 1996, has no religious affiliation whatsoever. It's 48%, up 9 points from 2016. It's an astonishing change in a very little amount of time. And I think it shows how the grip of faith has loosened over time and how organized religion itself is no longer seen as useful for young people whose lives have been upended by conservative beliefs and the loudest religious voices inside those denominations. What's fascinating about those numbers is how, even though there isn't a huge change when you look at each generation's snapshots in 2016, 2020, and 2022, Gen Z keeps getting less religious. Their bars keep getting taller. They already began tall, meaning non-religious, and yet the numbers keep going up. Even as other generations appear to be leveling off, there's no telling how much higher the Gen Z non-religious numbers will get. Burge, the sociologist who put these charts together, said, "It seems statistically justifiable to say that by the time the United States has another presidential election, half of Generation Z will identify as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular."
Many Gen Zers cite specific reasons on their departure from traditional faith. Here are two statements from young individuals about why they do not follow God. This is from Alex, 22 years old, from Fresno, California. "I just don't see how a loving God would allow so much suffering in the world. If He's real, why doesn't He do something about it?" From Morgan, 19 years old, from Cincinnati, Ohio. "Religion feels outdated and full of rules, and I want to live my life without fear and judgment." Despite these statistics that you've heard, some Christian believers and leaders remain hopeful with Gen Z that they will turn to their faith. Watch this.
More young people are leaving the church. Pastors are struggling to find ways to engage them. But there is some good news. A recent Barna survey shows most in the Gen Z generation have a positive view of Jesus. Barna President David Kinnaman says they aren't interested in sermons, but in how to live out a personal relationship with God. And that presents a tremendous opportunity for faith leaders.
Craig, I want to ask you, we kind of hit on this earlier, what are the similarities that you see between the hippies generation in which you guys were coming up and Generation Z, this group that we as a society have claimed too difficult to label and too difficult to understand?
Yeah, that's it. Difficult to understand. Our generation was as well. I mean, think about what preceded it. World War II, we've come through this horrible period in American history. There's a buoyant optimism as reflected in even the design of things, the cars with the big fins and looking to tomorrow and all the, and yet here is this generation of young people, that the children of the greatest generation, the boomers, and they're going crazy. They're rebelling. They don't want any of this. And the parents are thinking, we've come through this horrible time. What are you guys doing? And it was, it was a kind of a rebellion against the status quo. And the hippie dream, the hippie mythology promised brotherhood, peace, and love. But it was a lie. It was a myth, and it wasn't there. It was just more of the same old thing with a different kind of wrapping. But then God intervened and sent a revolution. The word revolution was used a lot in those days. Sexual revolution, political revolution. God sent a Jesus revolution. Here's the operative word for then and now, Jesus. Amen. What is Generation Z interested in? They're interested in Jesus. And that is our message. Paul said, I don't want to hear anything else among you except Christ and Him crucified. And this, I think the success of the series, The Chosen, that Dallas Jenkins directs it, my friend Jonathan Rumi stars in it playing Jesus, and we played Lonnie in this film. People want to know more about Jesus. And our movement was not called the Bible movement, though that's great, or the God movement. It was called the Jesus movement. I think that's the key. It's Jesus.
So here's the question. How can the church reach Gen Z? With Gen Z's skepticism towards organized religion, churches must adapt their approach without using traditional church lingo. So here are some key strategies to connect with Gen Z. Authenticity over tradition. Gen Z values honesty and transparency. Church should focus on real-life testimonies and open dialogue rather than religious rituals and formalities. And we also have to engage in the digital platform. Social media, podcast, and short-form videos like this one, and content that can be effective in presenting biblical truth and relatable ways. Also, community-based outreach. Rather than expecting Gen Z to come to church, Christians should meet them where they are, whether it's on campus, at a coffee shop, or through local community service projects. And then it's time to address the tough questions. Many young people have genuine doubts about their faith, and churches should create safe spaces to discuss on topics like suffering, identity, and purpose, and living out the gospel. More than sermons, Gen Z needs to see Christians embody the love of Christ in everyday actions. Matthew chapter 5:16 says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." We want your comments. What are you thinking about this subject with Gen Z? Let us know. I'm your host, John Fowler, and now you're informed.